Good morning, everybody. Does this microphone work?
Yes.
So, Dr. Kartikeyan, is it okay if I answer your question in the middle or the end of the talk rather than the beginning?
Anytime.
Because if I answer it now, I won't be able to give my talk.
You do it towards the end.
But I promise.
I'm sure during the course of the talk it will come up.
I promise I'll answer the question, but I need to give more context.
Okay.
Very good. So I wanted to speak about, the name of the talk is The Evolution of Enlightenment. So I want to speak in a broad sense about the evolution of enlightenment. And enlightenment, of course, is a state of consciousness. It's a transformative spiritual experience. But the whole notion of enlightenment, which is Mother India's greatest gift to the world, in the context of cultural evolution, the evolution of culture. I want to speak a little bit about that. So my own personal story and my search for moksha and my search for enlightenment is also about the evolution of culture. So I became a seeker when I was 22 years old. I was seeking for moksha. And then when I was 27, I'm 63 now. When I was 27, I came to India. And when I came to India, I went to Bodh Gaya and attended a meditation retreat, a Buddhist meditation retreat for 20 days. And there I met my wife, Alka, who's there. Where is she? That's her.
Welcome to you also. Pardon me for not mentioning your name.
No. He is the son-in-law of India. We must welcome him.
So I met my wife after the meditation retreat, and she was also a true seeker. She also was only interested in moksha. So we shared the same spiritual values from the very beginning, and this is the reason why we decided to come together. Because of our spiritual values, this was what brought us together. And then in 1986, I met my guru, H.W.L Poonja. And then I spent 3 weeks with him in Lucknow. And when I met him, he wasn't very known yet. He wasn't famous. He became very famous, but this was before he was known. And I spent 3 weeks in his company, and he expressed nothing but perfect kindness, perfect compassion, love, and generosity. I would go to his house in the morning, and we would go for walks, have tea. He would invite me for lunch and for dinner, and he just showered me with love and generosity, and he answered all my questions. And he didn't seem to want anything from me. I'd never met a man like this. At the end of the 3 weeks, when all my questions were answered, but I didn't really know who he was yet, and I didn't know what had happened, he said, "Andrew, when you leave me, something very big is going to happen to you." And this caused me to doubt him, because I thought, how can he know what's going to happen to me? Nobody can tell the future. So when I walked away from him, I left him after 3 weeks. I walked away, and when I turned back, he was just laughing. He was looking at me, waving and laughing. And so when I went to the train in the station of Lucknow, before I left, I was sitting alone in the train car. And as I was sitting there by myself, I was engulfed by a powerful presence. And this powerful presence was the experience of a pulsating vibration. It was a pulsating vibration of love and bliss. And in that vibration there was the presence of the infinite, the awareness of the infinite, the tacit knowledge of that which has no beginning and no end. And I felt suddenly that I was leaving my small self. I was leaving my personal story out, and I was entering into a completely different universe that was so big and so inconceivable I couldn't believe it. And I was simultaneously thrilled and completely terrified, because I realized in that moment that everything that I had ever hoped for was actually happening to me. But it was too much. It was too big. It was too overwhelming. It was too profound. And I was simultaneously, as I said, completely terrified and completely thrilled. And that was the beginning of my adventure. So, and then of course I went back to him 3 weeks later, and I fell at his feet, because I realized then who he really was. And that meeting changed my life forever, and it changed the course of my life forever, and I've never looked back. So that's a little bit about my own history. And then of course I started traveling and teaching, was invited from place to place, and met so many people, and this has been going on for 30 years. So what I wanted to speak about today was, I wanted to speak about the evolution of this concept of moksha and concept of enlightenment, And I wanted to speak about it, as I said before, in the context of the evolution of culture. Now, when I was a seeker, likewise since I've been a teacher, I've always been very radical. So to me, the search for moksha, the search for enlightenment is a very serious business. It's not a part-time job. So the first person who gave me permission to seek for moksha with all of my heart and all of my soul was the great Swami Chidananda, who is the primary main disciple of the great Swami Shivananda. So in my early days being a seeker, I went to see Swami Chidananda give a talk at a yoga center on Long Island in New York. And he was answering a question about what's happening. Thank you. He was answering a question about being on the path. What does it mean to be on the path? What does it mean to be a seeker? And he said these lines exactly like this, which completely changed my attitude. He said, I'm going to quote. He quoted Tennyson, and then he said, and Tennyson said, in terms of being on the path, some may come and some may go, but I'll go on forever, step by step, step by step. And then he said, if someone asks you what you do, you say, I meditate, and I also live. So this, when I heard these words, where he was saying what we're supposed to be doing here is meditating, and the life, our personal life that we're living is secondary and not primary, and that our sadhana and our search for moksha and evolutionary transformation, spiritual transformation, the evolution of consciousness and the liberation of the mind and heart was primary, this liberated my spiritual passion. So when he said, when someone asks you what you do, you say, I meditate comes first, this set me free. Then I could give myself fully and unconditionally to the spiritual path. But then when I was in America, I couldn't do it. Because in America at that time, I was living in New York. When people said, what do you do? What are you interested in? I said, I'm interested in becoming enlightened. People said, oh, thank you very much. Most people thought I was crazy. But when I came to India, and I did this meditation retreat, and after the meditation retreat, I was in an expanded state of consciousness because I'd been doing so much meditation. I was drinking tea in a little tea shop, and I suddenly realized this extraordinary country, India, is giving me permission to search for enlightenment with all my heart. And I said, I'm not going home. I'm going to stay here until it happens. But nowhere in the world does culture give us permission to seek for our own freedom, to seek for our own liberation, to seek for the liberation of our own consciousness the way Mother India does. And this is very, very unusual. So that's why I said I'm going to stay here, because here I have permission to be a radical seeker, to be so crazy for consciousness, and no one's going to judge me. When I would meet people in India, meet Indians, and I said, what I'm interested is in moksha and interested in enlightenment, they said, oh wow, this is a very noble aspiration, Mr. Cohen. And I was getting so much respect from people simply because what I said, that I wanted to become a liberated person. This was so different than my experience back where I lived. So this is why I said I'm never coming home. And then, of course, when I met my wife, that sealed the deal. So Mother India has given me everything that I could have ever wanted plus more. So I feel in the eternal debt to Mother India. And now I find myself in an interesting position, because like many Westerners, I came to India a long time ago to seek for spirituality, to seek for enlightenment. And she gave me, as I said, everything I could have ever imagined and more. Then I went back to Europe and back to America to teach. And then I found myself in the situation of coming back to India and sharing the gift that she gave me with her, which is, in terms of the evolution of culture at a global level, is very interesting. So I find myself in a very unique and interesting position. So along those lines, I want to speak a little about the current situation that I see in India, which I find a little troubling in relationship to spirituality. So life, as you all know as well as I do or better, life in India is very difficult because India is so crowded. There's so many people here. Life is so stressful. Life is so stressful. Life is so stressful. Even for people who have enough money, who are relatively well off, who live in beautiful houses and beautiful apartments, life is still so full of stress, because simply to get from point A to point B in your own city, you might have a heart attack on the way because there's so much traffic, there's so much noise, there's so many people, everybody's so tense. I was giving a talk at a friend's apartment in Mumbai a year ago, and all the people were very loving friends and very sympathetic, and I was speaking about moksha. And I could tell nobody could relate to the idea of moksha. They said, look, Andrew, I don't have time to sit still for 10 minutes. And so they're all basically saying they're so stressed out, they're so busy, they're so overwhelmed by the business of surviving through one day to another, that the idea of moksha was such an esoteric idea, it had nothing to do with the reality of people's lives. So I had a meeting with Sri Sri Ravi Shankar about 5 years ago in Rishikesh, and I said to him, I said, Swamiji, you know, in the past, the yogic kriyas that you're teaching the multitudes were used for people who are interested in moksha, interested in spiritual liberation. Now you and the greatest yogis in India are teaching these kriyas, these meditation techniques, these pranayams, as a way to help people relieve stress, as forms of stress reduction, not to have anything to do with moksha anymore. It's really about helping people to survive the day. And he laughed. He said, Andrew, you should come to India more often. So if you look, for example, in a lot of the magazines, like Life Positive and The Speaking Tree and other popular publications, a lot of the dharma and a lot of the talk about meditation and a lot of the talk about sadhana is all about helping people to survive the overwhelming chaos and tension and fear and anxiety and confusion of modern life, right? And it's perfectly understandable because life is it's crazy in the West, it's crazier in India, and I don't think I'm exaggerating. So the issue for me is I want to help people reconnect with the original intention to go all the way, to become enlightened. In other words, when the Buddha sat under the Bodhi tree, when the Buddha made a decision to sit down under the Bodhi tree and not get up until he was enlightened, this was a very serious intention, it was a very serious aspiration. The greatest realizers have always been men and women who had such an aspiration that they said, I'm gonna do this no matter what it takes. And my feeling in India right now is that so many people are so distracted by the challenge of surviving the modern experience that there's not much room in people's minds and hearts to consider the true depths of the potential for spiritual liberation. Does that make sense to everybody? Yeah. So one of my hopes is that on my trips to India, I want to try and vivify and re-inspire the original intention to go all the way without compromising, which I think is the foundation of what it means to go all the way. So does what I'm saying resonate? So I've had all kinds of interesting experiences that have confirmed this. So I was speaking 2 weeks ago at a ladies' college in Bangalore, a ladies' Catholic college in Bangalore. And when I go to the colleges in India, I want to try and inspire the kids to become interested in spirituality. So there was about 200 girls, and I asked the girls, what's the most important thing in life? And I asked the girls, is marriage the most important thing in life? And they all said, no. And I said, wow, I'm very impressed. Then I asked the girls, is having children the most important thing in life? And they said, no. I went, wow, very radical group of young women. Then I said, is money the most important thing? And they all said, yes! And then I said, oh my God, I'm so... And then when I tried to explain to them why money wasn't the most important thing, they couldn't understand what I was saying. They couldn't relate to the fact that maybe there's something deeper and higher, more fundamental and more essential in our search for happiness than materiality. The other thing that I found when I go to the colleges is that most of the young people, again, I'm making broad generalizations, but so many young people are under so much stress because their parents are putting a lot of pressure on their sons and daughters to get a good education so that their children can get married. So their sons and daughters get a good education so they can get a good job, so they can get married, so they can have children, so their children can get a good education so they can get a good job, so they can get married and have children, and on it goes. And there's enormous pressure on young people to perform so they can realize or meet the expectations of their parents and of their teachers at school. And a lot of the young people admit that they don't have a lot of space or freedom to think independently. So when I go to these schools, I say, look, unless you have the freedom to think independently about what's truly important, you're never going to be able to find your way. Usually, the fundamental spiritual questions, like who am I and why am I here? Those are the fundamental spiritual questions. Who am I and why am I here? This is considered to be postgraduate inquiry, right? Postgraduate level, after you've finished university and you get your PhD and you've accomplished all of that. Then you can say, well, okay, now that I've done that, now I can ask the really, truly important questions like who am I and why am I here? So I tell the kids, I think that's completely crazy. Because ideally, first we want to know who we are, we want to know why we're here, we want to know why the universe exists, before we answer the question of what should I possibly be doing with my life. But this kind of inquiry is usually postponed till one is in the middle of one's life, till one is suffering, full of confusion, full of existential confusion, fear, anxiety, frustration. And a lot of people start asking these fundamental and essential questions when they're already halfway through their life, when they've already made all the mistakes. Ideally, we want to ask these questions earlier, don't you think? Huh? The other thing I tell the young people is that in India, where so many young people are so deeply conditioned to follow the rules and to be a good boy, to be a good girl, and to fulfill the expectations of their parents, which generally don't have much to do with deep spirituality, which have to do with conforming to cultural norms, I try to tell them, and most of the young people don't know this, I said that Mother India's greatest gift to the world has been spirituality, has been the knowledge of consciousness, has been the discovery of enlightenment, the discovery of spiritual freedom, the discovery of the greatest gift that there is. This has been India's greatest gift to the world. Do you know that? And they kind of go, uh-huh. They have no relationship to it. And then I go on to explain that India's greatest realizers, greatest saints, greatest sages, and greatest realizers were, in each and every case, individuals who all bucked the system. An individual who bucks the system says, I'm not going to believe what anybody else says, I'm going to find out what the truth is for myself. So this requires a certain amount of independent spirit, independent passion. It requires a fearless and ferocious independence. And I'm trying to encourage all of them to think for yourself about what's most important. Don't just do what other people say you should do because they say it. Find out for yourself what's most important. Ask the fundamental questions. Find out who you really are. Find out why you're here. And then ask yourself, what do I want to do with my life? So this is kind of the message I've been trying to bring. So you see the predicament I'm painting? And the modernism and the materialism in India is far overtaken India's spiritual heritage, which is her greatest gift. Does this all make sense to everybody? Am I crazy, or are my observations accurate? I think so. Very good. And the other thing is that some of the traditional teachers, while they're upholding the tradition, are doing so while not necessarily being able to embrace fully the context of modernity and of the evolution of culture. The world has changed a lot in the last 100 years, the last 50 years, the last 20 years, the last 10 years. You can all feel the world's changing very quickly, right? So I think we also need our spirituality and our approach to moksha to change in alignment with the way culture is changing. Would that make sense? Because we're not living in the world is not the way it was 3,000 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 500 years ago. The world is very different. And we need a way to understand spirituality, to understand moksha and the way to approach it, that will be more in alignment with the reality of the way the world has changed. Otherwise we have one foot in the past and one foot in the present. And that's what keeps us divided. So these are some of my thoughts. So this is what I wanted to say about modern India and some of the problems that I see. But there's the second part of my talk, which I wanted to share some ideas about the evolution of enlightenment, the evolution of enlightenment, the evolution of the concept of enlightenment, the evolution of the interpretation of enlightenment, what it means. So traditionally, in Vedanta, we're taught that there exists a primary and fundamental reality, that's deeper than time, that's deeper than space, and that's deeper than the personal identity. And they said this deeper reality is called the self. with a capital S. Have you all heard about it? The self. It means not the personal self. It's not your personal self. It's not your personal identity. It's not your ego. The personal self is the ultimate truth. The personal self is the nature of God himself or herself. And we're told that if we meditate very deeply, then what's the point of meditation? The point of meditation is to transcend the mind, right? The point of meditation is to transcend the mind. So we find when we meditate very deeply, and we begin to transcend the mind, something begins to happen. Because when the mind begins to disappear from our awareness, simultaneously our awareness of time begins to disappear from awareness, because the mind and thought co-arise with the timeline. So when the mind arises, time arises. And when the mind disappears, thought disappears. So when thought disappears and time disappears, the world begins to disappear. When the world disappears and the awareness of the body disappears, we have an awakening to or discovery of the infinite. We discover a dimension of being that's timeless, formless, beginningless, and endless. Timeless, formless, beginningless, and endless. Timeless, formless, beginningless, and endless. And in this state of consciousness where there's no time and there's no form and there's no mind and there's no world and there's no body and there's no duality, there's no you and there's no me, there's only that mystery, that inexplicable trans-rational mystery, where there's only the infinite knowledge of that which is indescribable. All we know is it has no beginning, it has no end. And the direct experience of that state of consciousness is the experience of freedom. It's the experience of freedom. It's the experience of profound, ecstatic freedom, love, joy, bliss, and freedom. Freedom, freedom. Freedom from the body, freedom from the mind, freedom from the tyranny of time and history, freedom from obligations, freedom from the pressure from our parents, from our family, from our culture. It's where we go back home, where everything was always already perfect, right? The experience of enlightenment, the experience of enlightened awareness, is the experience of perfection, joy, fullness, freedom, that's unrelated to time, it's unrelated to history. It exists as an immortal, untouchable reality. It's untouched by anything that happens in time and history. And this is the essence of what it teaches us. Right? And if we touch this place in ourselves, if you touch this place either through the grace of a guru, the grace of an enlightened person, or through the practice of your own sadhana, if you touch this place, even for 1 second, it'll change your life forever. It's like going from one dimension to another, one experience to another, and they're so different. It's going from the relative to the absolute, jumping from a relative to the absolute. It's like jumping into an ocean of freedom, an ocean of bliss, an ocean of joy, an ocean of love, and that ocean is infinite and timeless, formless, beginningless, and endless. It's infinite. It's like jumping into an infinite ocean of freedom. And I'm not exaggerating, and everything that's been written about this and described in the scriptures is all true. It's really what it is, and it can't be described in words. And through the grace of my guru, I had this experience. But when you have this experience, it changes everything, because you know fundamentally, from that perspective, that everything's okay, and everything's going to be okay. Because from the perspective of the deepest part of the self, nothing's ever happened. Because the deepest part of yourself and the deepest part of myself, as the Buddha himself said, has never been born and never entered the stream of time. This is a depth dimension that exists prior to time, prior to space, prior to the creative process. Before anything ever happened, there was only that. So when we have a meditative experience, when we let go of the mind and we let go of time and we let go of the body, this depth dimension of freedom begins to emerge and arise in our experience, and this is the experience of bliss and freedom. And that's the only time when all of our fears go away and all of our anxiety goes away, and where we experience the fullness of being. And when we experience the fullness of being, we experience freedom. Then we know, oh, if this is who I really am, if this is what the ultimate truth is, this changes the whole picture of what it means to be a human being. Right? Changes everything. It doesn't change some things, it changes literally everything, because now we know who we are as immortal, uncreated, and indestructible. So if this is the case, and it is the case, this gives us enormous courage and spiritual strength to live a human life in a crazy, chaotic, confusing world where a lot of people are quite crazy, a lot of people are very frightened, a lot of people are very angry, and a lot of people are confused, right? Right? So it's hard to be a sane person in a crazy world where everybody's so uptight, frightened, confused, angry, and misguided. Correct? So when you experience these higher states of consciousness on a regular basis, it becomes a source of spiritual sanity. Because I always believe we have to strive to be the most liberated and the most sane person that we know. Because otherwise we're always depending on other people, aren't we, for our sanity? We're depending on others to give us spiritual self-confidence. But when you discover the source of freedom, the source of moksha inside your own self, you become the source of your own self-confidence, which makes you independent. Right? How can anybody be free if they're not independent? So if you discover this depth dimension that all the greatest rishis and seers and realizers have described for so many millennia, you discover the source of it in yourself. You discover a source of independence that sets you free and turns you into a very powerful person. You become a vortex of spiritual power. Don't you think that's something worth doing? Don't you think if you had that kind of awakening, it might change not some things but everything? Would it not change? Wouldn't it change everything? It changed literally everything for me. I went from being insecure to being a beacon of sanity. That's not a small shift. When I went to see my guru after I hadn't seen him for 6 months, he said something very interesting when I walked in the room. So just listen to this. It's very short. He was sitting there and I walked in the room. I hadn't seen him for 6 months. And the words he says, "I'm so glad you found a friend you'll never be able to see." Wow. So I repeated. He said, "I'm so glad you found a friend you'll never be able to see." You know what that means? Everybody, do you know what it means? So you remember the essence of Vedanta is non-duality, is oneness, right? Vedanta says the ultimate truth that there's only one and not two. Non-duality is not two-ness, which means oneness, right? You all know that, correct? So it means there's only one, correct? The ultimate truth, not the relative truth, but the ultimate truth is there's only one. So if there's only one, and you are that one, which is the whole point, if there's only one and you are that one, how could you ever see yourself as an object? Huh? If there's only one and you are that one, how would you wouldn't be able to ever see yourself, because you can't see your own face unless you look in the mirror. But you know my point? You can't see your own face because you are that. He said, "I'm so glad you found a friend you'll never be able to see." When people are looking for moksha, they always want to see it, they want to hold it, they want to grab it like a separate object in their own hands and grab it with their mind. Now I know it. Now I've got it. I know it. I have it. You say, no, you can never know it. You can't have it. It's not something that can be known or grasped or understood with the intellect, and it's not something that can be grabbed with your hands or with your feet or even with your heart. The only way to experience moksha, to discover moksha, is to let go of everything else. You follow? The only way to get it, to realize it, to discover it, to experience it, is to let go of everything else. Say, oh, I don't want to do that. I thought you wanted to be free. I do. Then let go of everything else. I say, but I don't want to do that. Then it's not going to work. You see the challenge? Do you see the challenge? If you want to be free, you have to be willing. Doesn't mean you necessarily have to do it, but the willingness to let go of everything else that's in the way has to be there. The willingness to let go and say, not my will be done, but thy will be done. You follow? Huh? So we're making 2 points here. That moksha is not an object. You can't have it with you can't know it with your mind. You can't grab it with your hands or with your body. It's not a possession. But I want it so badly. So if you want it so badly, let go of everything else. If you let go of everything else, that's all that's left. Right? If you let go of everything else, it's all that's left. Does this state of consciousness appear out of nowhere, or does it exist eternally? Does it appear suddenly as something new that never existed before, or is this state of consciousness eternal, always existing, ever present, The only thing is that we don't see it because our mind is distracted by other things. We're thinking about the fears and desires of our ego. We're thinking about so many things, about our children, about our work, about our own fears, about our own desire. We're thinking about so many things we're preoccupied with, so that's why we don't see it. Right? It's always there. Where else could it be? You follow what I'm saying? So then you say to people, well, if you want to have this experience, you have to let go of, you have to be willing to let go of everything else. You don't necessarily have to let go of everything else, but you have to be willing to. The willingness has to be there to let it all go. And that's when the ego says, I'm not going to do that. And then that's when the trouble starts. Then people say, well, if I meditate long enough, will it happen? Say, well, are you willing to let go? What's meditation all about? Is meditation really about chanting a mantra? About breathing a particular way? Huh? If you chant the mantra, you start to let go of the mind. If you do the right pranayama breathing exercises, your mind starts to be more fluid. So all these spiritual exercises are meant to get us to a point where we're willing to let go. You say, no, I can let go of everything. I can let go of anything. It's not a problem. I'm not attached to anything. I want to know the truth. I want to be free. I want to know the truth. I want to be free. I want to know the truth. I want to be free. I'll let go of anything for that. Please, God, set me free. Set me free. Please set me free. All I want to know is what the truth is. And then it starts to dawn on us. It starts to appear in the eye of our own mind, and our own heart begins to open. And we say, oh my God, it's been here all along and I haven't seen it. I've been looking in the wrong direction. How foolish. How foolish I've been. You follow? So you see the challenge. So as you all already know, if what I'm saying is true, and I feel it is true, if we live, and this is even true in India, the most spiritual country in the whole world, if we live in a fundamentally materialistic culture that's telling us the source of happiness is in having things and being an important person, we don't want to let go. Huh? We don't want to let go because there's fear. If I let go of this and I let go of that, I won't know who I'll be. I won't know what's up. So this is the perennial challenge, right? It's not new. This challenge was the same 5,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 500 years ago, and it's true today. Does that make sense? I'm afraid of letting go. People say, I'm afraid of letting go. I say, what are you afraid of? I'm afraid of losing everything. I say, oh, well, maybe you'll lose everything, but you'll gain the most important thing. I've had some experiences, some powerful experiences, and this is not my permanent state, so I want to be very humble about this. But I've had some experiences where I felt so free, so fearless, so powerful, that I knew I could sit in the street in that state, which is not my normal state, but that I could sit in the street as a beggar, having nothing, just living in rags, begging for a few coins, and be happier than any single person who came by and put the coins in the cup. And when I had that experience, I went, wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. It's really true. Now, I'm saying this is not my natural state, my permanent state, but I've tasted it. I know what it's like to feel that free, that you could have nothing materially, literally have nothing, and be so happy and so full of joy and so fearless that you'd know that you'd be happier than any person who came by and put a rupee in your cup. So these states of consciousness actually exist, and these things are true. So the challenge for all people that are truly serious and sincere is the same as it's always been, and this has to do with the issue of am I willing to let go? Am I willing to let go that deeply? Am I willing to let go? Am I willing to let go that deeply? Do I trust God, whoever he or she is? Because we can never know. Remember, my guru said, I'm so glad you found a friend you'll never be able to see. How can you describe something that you can't see? How can you describe something that you can't see? How is it possible that your best friend can be someone that you can't see, that you can't put your arms around, that you can't tell them I love you? How could your best friend and your most intimate friend be someone you can't see? Isn't that amazing? So the answer is through not knowing. I don't know. For example, I was coming here this morning to speak to all of you, very much looking forward to it, but I didn't know what I was going to talk about. And my confidence comes from not knowing, because I trust in the friend that I can't see, and he or she's never let me down, not once. So I have to enter into an attitude of trust, which is I give it all to God, and I come in empty, but there's faith and there's trust in what I can't see and the friend I can't see. Faith and trust in the friend I can't see, and then everything happens by itself. I don't do anything. The friend does all the work, and I'm merely doing my job. Does that make sense? Good morning, good morning. Come in, sit down. You have to pay double because you were late, you know that.
Yes, we are late. Sorry for that.
No, it's a double extra charge. I'm only kidding. Okay, I wanted to make one final point before we take questions. So my guru told me, the truth he revealed to me. He's distracting me with the pictures. Thank you. So my guru basically shared with me the essential message of Vedanta, which is that nothing's happening. Nothing ever happened. The world is an illusion, time is an illusion, space is an illusion. The only truth is the uncreated, the unborn, the self. That which was never born, that which has never existed in time is the ultimate reality. He told me that, he made it very clear to me that this is all a joke. The world is an illusion. If you hear me, the world is an illusion. Your life is an illusion. Your body is an illusion. Your mind is an illusion. Nothing ever happened. Realize that and be free. Realize that and be free. Realize that and be free. You follow? It never really happened. You were never really born. Did you know that? Be careful, because I'm going to contradict everything I'm saying in a minute. So as you shake your head, be careful, because I'm going to contradict myself. But this was the message. You were never born. You never entered the stream of time. Your whole life is an illusion. And I had the experience when I was with him that this was actually true. I had what they call, in Zen Buddhism they call it Satori. So the Satori experience in Zen Buddhism is when you realize that nothing ever happened, and then the whole universe is a big joke. So when you have this Satori experience, it's the funniest thing in the world. And I burst out laughing and laughing and laughing and laughing. I was crying with joy because I realized it was all a big illusion. Nothing ever happened. Because imagine if you were convinced that your whole life was an illusion and nothing ever happened, how free would you be? Completely free, right? Because you wouldn't be attached to any of it, because you know actually it never really happened. Even though it appears to be happening, it never really happened. Follow? So you feel so happy, and then I was laughing and laughing and laughing. So this is one experience of moksha, not the only one. This is familiar. I'm sure I'm describing something you've heard before, correct? Huh? So I want to explain to you what it means. If someone says the world is an illusion, before the universe existed, what was there? Before the universe existed, what was there? Shunya, shunyata. You've heard of this before? Shunya, shunyata. Emptiness, nothingness, formlessness, timelessness. Correct? Before the universe existed, what was there? No thing whatsoever. Nothingness. Correct? You with me? Before the universe existed. So when you enter into a meditative state of consciousness, when you want to transcend the mind and transcend time and transcend the body and go beyond everything, it's so you can awaken to this depth dimension that exists before time, before the universe was born. There's only what? Emptiness, nothingness. Correct? It's timeless, formless, beginningless and endless. Timeless, formless, beginningless and endless. Timeless, formless, beginningless and endless. But they say nothing is there except you. Because the essence or the fundamental nature of this nothingness is there's an I sense, the I amness, the pulsation and the vibration of the I, which is who you are. Do you feel the I right now? When I'm speaking to all of you, can you feel the I? Can you feel the I when I'm speaking to you? If you don't respond, I don't know if you understand. Just say yes or no. Do you feel the I inside yourself? Yes. Thank you very much. Is that I your ego? No. Well, what happens is a lot of people think it's their ego, but when they begin to meditate, they realize it was never their ego. There's one I in the universe. Vedanta tells us this. There's one I in the ego, one I in the whole universe. There's only one self, not two. Your experience of I is my experience of I, is Dr. Kartikeyan's experience of I, is the cat's experience of I, the dog's experience of I, nature's experience of I. There's only one I, which is a vibration of oneness. But oneness is not a flat oneness, it's a full oneness. There's a fullness. And the fullness is because in the nothingness and in the emptiness there is I am. So when the whole world disappears, when time disappears and form disappears, the world disappears, the body disappears, the mind disappears, and you experience just shunyata, emptiness, nothingness. In the nothingness there's an I, right? But it's an impersonal, absolute I. It's not a personal I. It's not an I related to the ego. It's the I at the source of the core of the universe. You follow? There's only one I. Vedanta says the ultimate truth is that there's only one and not two. Correct? So that one I is what you awaken to when the whole world disappears, when your mind disappears, the world disappears, the time disappears, the universe disappears, everything disappears. There's only I. One I. It's an infinite I. That I has no beginning and no end. That I also exists beyond time and beyond form. Correct? One self. There's only one self. There's only one self. That's what that I is. You follow? So when my guru told me that the universe is an illusion, that nothing exists, only the I is real, the self with the capital S, the true self, that's what he meant. You follow? Because that I is unborn, uncreated, exists beyond time and beyond form. Therefore, it's a transcendental I. It exists free from anything and everything that was ever created. It's eternal, unborn and undying, immortal. That's why it's the source of freedom. That's why it's the source of moksha. How are we doing about the description of enlightenment? So far, so good? So far, so good? But now, is that clear? This is very much in alignment with Vedanta so far. Is it clear? Is this something you'd want to know? One second. I have 5 more minutes, and I'll take questions. So far, is it clear? So then I want to ask you a question. When the universe was created, you remember when that happened? Why not? I just said the question. Do you remember when the universe was created? People are saying, no, I don't remember. Why not? If there's only one I in the universe, are you that I? Does that mean yes? There's only one I in the universe. Vedanta tells us there's only one I in the universe, only one. Therefore, are you that I? Thank you. You have to be. If there's only one, if it's not you, who is it? Can't be me. Right? There's only one. So if there's only one I in the universe, it has to be you. Is that not true? Is that true? Yes. So how can you say you weren't there when the universe was created? Because you're the only one that possibly could have been there to create it in the first place. Could anyone else have done it except you? Listen, think about it. I'm asking you a serious question. It's an outrageous question, but it's a serious question. There's only one I in the universe, right? There's only one I, period. That one I is you, because there could not be another if there's only one. Is that true? We agreed, right? True? What? Yes. How many? I'm asking you a question. Is that true? Yes. Thank you. So if there's only one I in the universe, who created the universe? And what's the nature of God? Is the I, correct? Is that who God is? God's the one without a second? Okay. So when I say, therefore, you are the only one there could have been to create the universe, correct? As inconceivable, as unimaginable, as wild as it seems to little old you, I'm not talking about your ego. I didn't say your ego created the universe. I said you, the true self. So when I say, do you remember creating the universe, what are you going to say? But you had to have been there. Why don't you remember? How could you have forgotten what you did? How could you have forgotten what you did? Is there anything bigger that anybody could ever have accomplished than creating a whole universe? Could you have ever accomplished something bigger, more important, more profound, more meaningful, more purposeful? Huh? Could anyone, could any god, could any goddess, could any divine being create anything bigger, more profound, more meaningful, more purposeful than creating a whole universe? Is it possible? No. Okay, very good. But stay with this point that you are the creator because there is no other one except you, correct? At least metaphysically, you agree that it makes sense what I'm saying, correct? No one else could have done it except you, so very good. So when the universe was created, there was the greatest miracle happened. The greatest miracle is that something came from nothing. Something came from nothing. Before the universe was created, there was no time, there was no space, there was no form, there was no matter, there was no energy, there was no mind, there was no life, there was nothing, correct? No thing whatsoever. Shunyata, voidness, emptiness, nothingness, voidness, emptiness, nothing. Empty, nothing, nothing. Right? Peaceful. Correct? And then there was this huge explosion. Inconceivably vast explosion. Correct? You remember now? Am I awakening your memory? It was the biggest explosion that ever happened, and the explosion is still happening. The universe is an explosion in motion. The universe and all of cosmic evolution is an explosion in motion. You and I, your body, your mind, your personality, my body, my mind, and personality, are all manifest expressions of that explosion in motion that happened 14 billion years ago when the universe was created. You are, and I am, the energy and intelligence that created the universe and is creating the universe, which is an explosion in motion, awakening to itself, realizing itself, and recognizing itself in and through the body, mind, personality of Dr. Kartikeyan, Andrew Cohen, and anybody else in this room. You are the energy and intelligence that created the universe. You're the one singularity, that singular energy and intelligence that created the universe, that chose to create the universe, that's awakening to itself, that's recognizing itself, realizing itself, experiencing itself through the body, mind, and personality of yourself. Your body, mind, and personality is not who you are. Your body, your mind, and your personality is a vehicle through which consciousness can awaken to itself. Does that make sense? Huh? The body, the mind, and the personality is not you. The body, the mind, and the personality is a vehicle through which the energy and intelligence that created the universe can become self-aware. God can become self-aware through your body, through your mind, through your personality. Moksha, another definition of moksha, Dr. Kartikeyan, is when the universe becomes conscious of itself through your body, your mind, and your personality. When the universe becomes awake to itself through my body, mind, personality, that's profound. Then I say, my body is not who I am, my mind is not who I am, my personality is not who I am. I am, and you are, the only one that could have created the universe. I am, and you are, the energy and intelligence that created the universe, is creating the universe right now, awakening to itself, recognizing itself, realizing itself, knowing itself, who I really am, through this body, mind, and personality. Which means, if God is the creator, God becomes self-aware, self-conscious, when you become enlightened. As you become enlightened, God becomes enlightened through you, in matter, in form, through the body and through the mind. The consciousness and the intelligence that created the universe becomes self-aware, gains self-knowledge through your awakening, through your moksha, through your enlightenment. Do you understand? Do you understand? As you awaken, as you become conscious, as you gain self-reflective awareness, as you gain moksha, the universe becomes more conscious through you. You understand? It's a very important point. The most important thing I've said all morning is that when you awaken, the universe becomes more conscious through you. Why should I care about spirituality? Why should I care about moksha? Who cares? I don't care. The world is in such a mess. Why are you worried about spirituality? People are starving. So many people are suffering. There's global warming. There's a war in Syria. Donald Trump is president of America. So many things are going wrong. You say, well, think of what it means that the universe becomes more conscious when we become enlightened. The universe becomes more conscious through you and through me and through each and every one of us. Imagine how conscious the universe would be if all human beings, this is a metaphysical fantasy, it's a utopian dream, but if all sentient beings on earth became enlightened, imagine how much more conscious the universe would be through us. Don't you think this is kind of a little bit important? Huh? Because most people are walking around, they don't have no idea who they are. The universe can't become conscious through them because everybody's sleepwalking, because we're so programmed, right? I am and you are the energy and intelligence that created the universe and is creating the universe, awakening to itself through you and me. So when I say, hi, how are you? And you say, hi, how are you? We say, I know, it's really the universe saying hello to itself through the illusion of two different bodies, minds, and personalities, but it's really the same one self. The creator energy and intelligence is saying hello to itself, even though we appear to be different, but we're really not different. Right? Make sense? So if you say, yes, I'm going to do what I need to do to become an enlightened person, and you succeed, then the universe becomes more conscious because you did it. If you ever meet a truly enlightened person, I mean someone who's really awake, you feel something in their presence. You become more conscious in their presence. In the presence of an enlightened person, you feel more conscious, you become more conscious. Your mind becomes more clear, more powerful, your heart opens. You feel like you're more alive, you're more conscious, you're more in touch with reality. And that's only because one person did it. Is that important? I think so, because when you become more conscious, you know who you are, you know why you're here, you can begin to make sense of the human experience in a way you can't make sense of the human experience unless you're conscious, right? Because most people don't even think their own thoughts. Have you noticed? Do you think your own thoughts? I'm asking you an honest question. Most people don't think their own thoughts. We think we're thinking our own thoughts, but we're really thinking what someone else told us, something your parents told you, something your teacher told you, something you read in the newspaper. Most people are recycling other people's ideas. It takes a lot of courage, a tremendous independence to think your own thoughts. Think your own thoughts, to become your own self. Become your own self. Become your own independent, autonomous, liberated self, to be an autonomous human being. The greatest modern realizers in India, the great Sri Aurobindo and Tagore, these were people who are thinking independently. They weren't robots who were just recycling other people's ideas, but most of us are just doing that because we're too lazy to think for ourselves about what's true. Have you noticed that? What do you really think about what's most important, and why do you think that? Have you thought about it for yourself? Can you tell me why you think what you think? Can you tell me why you believe what you believe? Can you really do it? Most people can't. They say, I don't know, I just think it's true. Have you thought about it? Yeah. When? This is because our minds are so muddled with other people's ideas. Okay, the last thing I want to share about the evolution of enlightenment is that when God created the universe, which is you, remember, when God created the universe, which is you, when you created the universe, there was a leap from timelessness to time, right? Before the universe, there was no time. When the universe was created, that's when time began. So it was timelessness to time, formlessness to form, being, timeless, formless being, to infinite becoming. So before the universe was created, nothing was happening. When the universe was created, with the Big Bang, there was a creative momentum, a movement in time, a creative movement in time, God as the evolutionary impulse, God as the creator, God as the evolutionary impulse, created a movement, a creative movement in time. Are you aware of that? Evolution is a creative movement in time, a creative movement through time. Look at the movement. Is the leap from nothing to something a movement? Could there be a bigger leap from nothing whatsoever to something to everything? From nothing to everything? Was that a creative movement? Hello? Yeah. Was it a creative movement? Nothing to something. That you can't get a bigger movement than that. So that it was from nothing to energy and matter was the first leap. A huge movement. Something's happening. Nothing was happening. Everything was peaceful. Then suddenly, boom, it all began. And then something else happened. From energy and matter, what appeared was life. So is the leap from energy and matter to life a movement? Big movement. Energy and matter gave rise to life. And then later on in the process, life gave rise to what? Mind. Nothingness to energy and matter, to life, to mind, to consciousness. Wow. Is that movement? Is it movement? So if you start to look at it, the universe is going somewhere. The creative process is going somewhere. God, as the creative process, when he or she took the leap from nothing to something, from timelessness to time, from formlessness to form, from being and becoming, took a leap from no motion, no movement, nothing happening, to huge momentum, to huge creative momentum, creative becoming, evolutionary becoming. You follow that? There's something happening. We're on a journey. God, evolution is God on a journey. God is on a creative journey of becoming. Do you understand that? From an evolutionary point of view, God is on a creative journey of becoming. He's a great artist, the ultimate creator. He's creating the universe. He took the leap from nothing to energy and matter to life to mind to consciousness. What a creator. So the universe is God as the great creator, the great artist. The universe is God in motion, creative motion moving forward. Is that not true? Huh? Something's happening here. Is something happening here? Is it big? Is it profound? Is it miraculous? Is it amazing? Huh? From nothing to all of this? Apparently there's more neurons in the human brain than there are in all the billions and billions of stars in the whole universe. Do you know that? There's more neurons in your brain than there are stars in the whole universe, apparently. The Creator is a genius, a creative genius, right? Is something happening? Is the creative genius, the creator of the universe, a genius, a creative genius? Is something important happening here? Is something profound, miraculous happening here? Very good. So, in what I call the new definition, the new interpretation of moksha, the new interpretation of moksha says, actually, it's not true that nothing's happening here. Something big, something profound, something miraculous, something overwhelming, significant is happening here. So enlightenment, sir, there's two definitions. One is the traditional, what I call the traditional interpretation of Vedanta, traditional interpretation of moksha, which is the realization of timelessness, formlessness, nothingness, shunya, shunyata, emptiness. The truth of Vedanta, there's only one self that exists prior to time, prior to the creative process, prior to the universe, before the mind, before the body, before anything and everything existed. There was only no thing whatsoever, which is the self. The self is timeless, formless, beginningless and endless, eternal, unborn and uncreated. Only peace, only peace, only peace. Shanti, shanti, shanti. Only peace. One definition. The other definition of moksha is God, and moksha is the energy and intelligence that created the universe and is creating the universe, awakening to itself through the body, mind, personality of you and me and each and every one of you. And God in this form is the experience of ecstatic urgency and creativity. Creativity. What is God's greatest miracle? Creativity. How did something come from nothing? Could there be a greater creative miracle than that? Something came from nothing. Think about it. From nothing came something. How did it happen? Nobody knows. Who could do it? Only God could do it. It's the ultimate miracle. Something came from nothing. Think about it. Dwell upon it. How did energy and matter come from nothing? How did life emerge from energy and matter? And why did life emerge from energy and matter? Why did life create the conditions for interiority, the inside of the universe, subjectivity, consciousness, self-awareness? With consciousness, the universe could know itself. With the emergence of consciousness and interiority, the universe could know itself. God, or the creator, the energy and intelligence that created the universe, can awaken to himself, know himself through his creation. Right? Isn't that amazing? God wants to know himself through you and through me. If you get out of the way and I get out of the way, if my ego gets out of the way, if your ego gets out of the way, that knowledge emerges. It's already there. It's always already there. If we let go of our egotism, our narcissism, our self-centeredness, our small-mindedness, our pettiness, then that knowledge blooms in our awareness. We realize, oh, I am the energy and intelligence that created the universe and is creating the universe, waking up to itself through the body, mind, personality of Dr. Karthikeyan, and in my body, mind, personality, and yours. And then you find super spiritual power vibrating and pulsating through your mind and body because you know who you are. You're the creator. This is your world, your universe. You created it. And then you want to take responsibility for it because you're the mother and you're the father of the whole thing. You're not the small person you think you are, really. You're the one and only singularity that created all this, awakening to itself through the body, mind, personality of yourself. That's who you really are. That's who I really am. That means, that calls you to live a big life, right? For big reasons, for a big purpose. You follow? Not a small person, but a big person. Not a big egomaniac, a big spiritually realized person who knows what the story is. You follow? So the second definition of moksha is that the universe is going somewhere. The universe is a creative process. The universe is a creative process. The greatest miracle of God is creativity. So awaken to the miracle of creativity in yourself. and see how much you can participate in all this, not as your small self, but as the Creator Himself. Thank you.
For others.
You gave, in your concluding comments, you gave two ways of getting to know God or your consciousness to that level. One was the traditional and the other one…
Correct.
Yes. Now, that universe, how it was created…
Mr. Gupta is former Finance Secretary, Government of India.
How it was created, it is formless, timeless. In Vedanta they say it is Atma and Paramatma. You connect your Atma with Paramatma. There are several ways in doing it. Everybody talks of meditation. There is one set of Sant Mat in India where they start talking of chakras, where they say that you concentrate your consciousness here, because your mind and consciousness both are intertwined. Not consciousness, but the mind and Atma is intertwined. So how do you loosen it? Because mind is always looking downwards and Atma is always trying to go upwards. All that is okay. And I think more the knowledge, more confusion is it. I mean, I am confused completely.
About what?
About how to get about it. You see, there is a very genuine desire to get to know something. Now, when you mention that the age of 16 or 23, you suddenly got that spiritual enlightenment. You got engulfed by that.
I got a glimpse.
12. And you got engulfed by that power, that energy. Now, question is, who gets it? Is it because, number one, we have to be receptive. Our mind has to be receptive. It is, after all, that is the only way by which we can get to know things. Or is it because of your spiritual evolution in the past births? Can it be done now? Because you find lots of people around. I have been attending a lot of lectures. I have been meeting a number of people. Now, our basic limitation is our linear thinking. We are not able to go beyond it because it calls for a non-linear thinking, completely different. Now, I get desperate and impatient.
That's good.
At how to get that experience. Because more you read and more you know, more you hear, more confused you become. You see,
now you must be more confused, even more confused today.
Because Dr. Andrew, the point is that life is very limited.
Very short.
You were lucky that you got it at the age of 12.
No, I didn't really get it till I was 31.
31. I am now 74. And we'll pop off one day without discovering anything. Now, the question is, what happened then? Where are we?
Then you have to come back and do it all over again.
No, that is the point I am saying. That if you have to come back and do it,
you have to.
Then the question I am asking you is that some fortunate few in Rishikesh or in Himalayas, people like you or big Vedantic Pandits who have got that experience, is it because of the efforts they made during the current lifetime, or is it because of the accumulated efforts of the previous lifetime? Number one. Number two, how do you know about the reality and what is the best way to go about it? There are so many ways. Meditation, hundreds of ways that people are talking to transcendental meditation.
I can answer you.
Hundreds of ways. And wherever you go, you find some peace. We've got peace because we are not concerned with ourselves, because we get transported into a different realm. Therefore, we get a feeling of peace. But that is not real peace.
It's not
So-
moksha.
Eh?
It's not moksha.
Yes. So
What's your question, sir?
the question is, how do we achieve it?
Okay, very good. So the first question is this: Does the event of a real moksha happening, is that the event? Is that the accumulated?
Yes.
Is that the accumulated merits that comes from prior births? And I personally believe that to be. I believe that to be true. I believe it with my mind and heart. I believe it. I don't know it for an absolute fact, but this is my belief. Okay, I believe this is the case. Because the question, what I've thought about is, why is it that some people can have a glimpse,
Yes.
like the jewel they get put in their hand, but they drop the jewel. They go on a meditation retreat. They go spend a week with this. Oh, something fantastic happened. Oh, my mind became very quiet and I saw the truth. It was amazing. But then they drop it. And they have to go back again and again and again until it happens again. Oh, it happened again, but then they drop it. Whereas another person, it happens once and they don't drop it. So I feel that the reason why some people don't drop it once they get it is because they already know what it is, because they've been at it for a very long time. For a lot of people, this absolute truth is so subtle, so profound, so subtle, so profound, so miraculous, that they need to be with this for many lifetimes in order to really know what it is, so they won't drop it. So in my teaching, see, there's many realizers who are all saying, I teach this form of meditation, I teach this form of sadhana, this is the best one, whatever it is. But I don't think moksha is a matter of methods or techniques or kriyas or any particular, or vipassana or sudarshan kriya or mantras. That's not the point. The point is that the sadhak who has come to that point in his or her own developmental journey where we make the decision, I want to be free. Not only I want to be free, yes, more than anything else. You remember in the talk I was talking about letting go of everything, the willingness, cultivating the willingness to let go of anything and everything else. Well, people say, I'm not willing to let go of anything and everything. The true seeker is, I'm willing, the willingness to give everything for that. So, I want to be free. If I ask all of you, do you want to be free? You'll all say, yes, of course. I'll say, more than anything else, and you go, no. So the secret that opens the door to moksha is not I want to be free. I want to be free more than anything else. So when the Buddha sat down under the Bodhi tree, you think it's because he was practicing vipassana meditation that he had his enlightenment? It had nothing to do. That was a secondary issue, the vipassana issue. It was because of his intention. The intention was willing to go all the way, more than anything else. Now, that's what cracks it open. More than anything else, right now is what opens the door. And I want to tell you a very simple little story. You said, who wants this? So I was sitting with my guru. He was sitting on his bed. I was sitting on a chair. We were sitting quietly. Nobody was there. Then something mysterious happened. I heard myself say the words. I didn't think these words. I didn't intend to say these words. So I witnessed myself saying to the master, I'm ready to die, but I don't know how. And when I said it, I went, who was this? I looked around to see who else was in the room, but nobody else was there. I realized, oh, that was me. Oh. Now, who said it? Because it wasn't my frontal self, my frontal personality, my ego. Because I had no awareness that I was going to say it. I was aware of it after it had been said, and I realized, oh, that was me who said that. Where does it come from? So in all of us, there's the frontal self, the frontal personality, the ego, the small I, right? The one who got up and brushed his teeth this morning, took a shower, got dressed, had breakfast, talked to his wife. Small self. But that's not who said to the master, I'm ready to die, but I don't know how. I want to die, but I don't know how. And he looked at me when I said it. His eyes bulged open. But I didn't say it. But I did say it. But it wasn't the small I that said it. So because it wasn't the small I was shocked to hear myself say that. So I call this authentic self. The authentic self in you has no doubt. The authentic self in you already says more than anything else, absolutely. That's your authentic self. Sri Aurobindo called this the psychic being. The psychic being in you and the psychic being in me is that internal momentum that's leading all true seekers to moksha. It's a momentum. It's the momentum of consciousness that's evolving. The momentum of, it's like, the psychic being is like a moving train of consciousness that's moving forward. And when you awaken to the psychic being, you suddenly realize you're on a moving train that's going towards enlightenment. It's the feeling of an internal momentum of consciousness. Feeling the internal momentum of consciousness. When you feel the internal momentum of consciousness, you're living in a different world than most people because you can feel it, you can feel it, you can feel it. I'm moving, it's moving. The train is moving, but the train is not your ego. It's your authentic self with everyone else's authentic self, and it's moving towards moksha. And remember, the self is attracted to itself. The guru, as you all know, is only your own true self, right? The guru is only your own true self, giving you a reflection of your own true self. The guru is not an external person. The guru is your own self, seeing himself, seeing herself in the reflection of another. But that's only a reflection of your own self, not anybody else. That's the part of you that wants to be liberated. The part of you that wants to be liberated is the part of yourself that is already liberated. You follow? The part of you that wants to be liberated is the part of you that already is liberated. So the way to expedite the process is to identify with the more than anything else. I want to be free. Yes. More than anything else. Now. That makes you very ready. More than anything else. When? Now. Your ego will be terrified. Your true self will be dancing with joy. And when your ego gets terrified, it's a good sign. When the ego gets frightened, when the ego feels insecurity, that means the real thing is right around the corner. So if you feel that kind of fear, celebrate. Thank God for feeling it, because you realize that the moksha is right around the corner then. So it's not the technique, it's not the particular, it's the intention that makes everything happen.
Thank you for a very enlightening...
You kindly identify yourself.
Unfortunately, I'm a professor of philosophy.
Unfortunately, why unfortunately?
Of Indian philosophy, unfortunately. And so...
why unfortunately?
I'll just tell you.
And a Gandhian.
We are a Gandhian scholar, struggling Gandhian, but a very good Gandhian scholar. Only struggling Gandhian, I can't call myself Gandhian, very difficult to be Gandhian. So I just wanted to clarify, because I'm a professor of Indian philosophy, that the Vedanta, what you're talking about, the orthodox and the something that you've come to, the evolutionary.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, it's actually all there in the Vedanta. I hope you know that the Vedanta is, there are two types of Vedanta. What you talked about, the orthodox, is the Advaita Vedanta. And by the way, it's not the self. I'll give you the Mahavakya of the, I think there are many Hindus here also. It is simply Brahm Satya, Jiva Mithya, Jivo Brahmo Napar. That is the Mahavakya, the only sentence. And that is, Brahma, the self which you could talk about, is the only reality. Jiva Mithya, everything else is illusion, is also yourself, the small I you keep talking about. And Jivo Brahmo Napar, you are nothing else but Brahma. And then the second is Tat Tvamasi, thou art that. So I think we cannot call it the self in that sense. You are Tat Tvamasi. So I think we have to be very clear about that. The number one, the orthodox thing, that is Brahma, that is the only reality, and you are Brahma. So there is only one self. That's for sure. Number two is the Vishishta Advaita. And there they talk about what you are talking about, that there are three realities, when it emerged, that is Brahma and the Vishwa and you, what you talked about, and the beautiful creative process, etc. So it's all there. I mean, there are these two things are already there. And my question to you is that I was very surprised to hear you say,
you were what to hear? Sorry.
I was very surprised to hear you say, because when you said that in modern times you need a different spirituality or something, because you're actually contradicting yourself. The need for that, because there's nothing to understand. Like you kept saying, do you understand? Do you understand? You can't get it through understanding. It's beyond rational knowledge, as you said. You have to experience. Once you get that experience, you're there. And so that experience is experience of transcendence. There's nothing new. I mean, it's not going to become new because of modern times. That's timeless experience. It's transcendence. For example, Gabriel Marcel, the existentialist, he says that I experienced grace with shattering clarity. That's what happened to you. That's what happens to people who really get that glimpse. Gandhi says, occasionally I find glimpses of the truth. Tolstoy says the same, glimpses of the truth, as you said. So it's a question of experience. So there's nothing new about, modernism having to do with that search for truth or the experience of transcendence. That will always be there the way it was. So...
Well, no, thank you for what you said. But I think that, Madam, the idea, the supposition, the idea, the assertion that the absolute itself could also be evolving is kind of a new idea. No, because it's generally understood the absolute is already only fully and completely what it always is. So that's in my first definition what I meant. But in the second definition, when we realize that in this evolutionary creative context, because we say, well, who created the universe? God created the universe. Before God created the universe, there was only perfection, unmanifest perfection, correct? But when the universe was created, there's a creative reaching, because there's a reaching because the leap was from nothing to energy and matter, just 1 second, energy and matter to life, life to mind. So there's a becoming, there's a reaching towards greater complexity. So in that there's an evolutionary process, and the consciousness that created it all is in a state of creative becoming, and that's what's different. Yes.
Are you born Christian?
Jewish.
Okay, doesn't matter.
Jews are the original Christians.
With all due apologies.
No.
But you have sort of, you've mixed up the two streams, the Advaita Vedanta with Christianity. And so because actually there is no creation. All that you're talking about, the creativity and all that, it's illusion. You yourself said it.
But
there is no world. There is nothing. It is illusion, Maya. And that's what's said in the Advaita. And the moment you realize it's Maya, then you are there. So there is no creativity. This is also an illusion that is created and the world and all. So actually it's a mix-up of Christianity, of how, and of that.
Respectfully, I disagree. Let me tell you, madam.
But you yourself said it's illusion. So we have created.
So
we have created an illusion. Nevertheless,
hold it. Let me tell you a funny story.
It's illusion.
Thank you. Your point of view.
Let me tell you a funny story. Can I tell you a funny? I want to tell you a funny story, madam. It's short, very short. It's a funny story. So I was at a conference here in India a couple of years ago, and there was a revered Swamiji telling me exactly what you just said. The Swamiji said, "But Andrew, evolution is an illusion." The Swamiji said to me, "Evolution is an illusion." I said, "Well, that may be true, Swamiji, but it took the Creator 14 billion years to create the conditions that made it possible for you and I to have this discussion about the fact that the universe is an illusion." Sorry.
Should I?
One at a time. One at a time.
Let us hear that, barrister.
I am Barrister J.C. Batra, Senior Advocate.
Yes, sir.
In Supreme Court of India.
Yes, sir.
Well, I had no illusion about having any experience, nor I am keen to have an experience. I am already experiencing whatever I am. But I just want to know, a man who has discovered, like you have experienced, what I read from Ramakrishna, Swami Ramakrishna, Guru of Vivekananda, he says the person who has realized is unable to speak like a person who goes to the ocean. He is made of salt, that person. Can he come back and describe you how deep is the ocean? Have you followed my question?
Well,
No, I don't.
This universe or this whole Maya is so deep. If you had immersed yourself and seen the reality, you would not be here to tell us how you experienced. This is what I meant.
Not necessarily.
Thank you.
Okay, one more. You have got a great educationist here.
That puts up.
I'm encouraged to bring the discussion to another level.
Yourself for the sake of others and for record.
I'm Jayesh Rajput. I worked in NCERT in school education in India.
Thank you.
I was worried that we were talking at a level which is normally non-comprehensible to most of us. Even here, when you were asking, have you followed, we kept quiet. Most of us kept quiet. Knowing is one thing, but comprehending it and internalizing it is another thing, entirely another thing. My work has been in the area how to universalize certain human values. Vivekananda, you must be well aware of his works.
Yes, of course.
Had said one sentence that stop all your rituals, devotions, or religious practices for 50 years. Put your gods in lock and key. Go and serve people who are starving, who are miserable, and then you experience what is the meaning of life. My concern has been how can we extend such messages to each and every child, because one issue that has not come up. You talk of enlightenment, we talk of spirituality, but the world at present is facing so much of violence, so many of wars, distrust, bigotry, fundamentalism. This is one side. The other side is we never had so much of knowledge and wisdom as we have at present. So this contrast, contradiction, can education help to manage it? We had made a proposition, just one more minute, that basics of all religions must be made known to every child. They should know two things. One, they should know the commonalities and learn to respect differences. This might help in creating a peaceful world. Dalai Lama says that if at the age of 8 years every child learns to meditate, peace would be there all around. But every child, even if one doesn't do it, he can create turmoil. This turmoil is being created by those who misinterpret religions. Can I say that it is the essential of all religions, if understood properly, that leads to the spiritual path? And if this is something which can be spread all over, how do we spread your ideas, these ideas which you have tried to explain, on a general level, so that people may not attain that high levels, that it is only I and nothing else, but at least they know how they can put the basic objectives of life in actual practice. That is.
So I have a little bit of a controversial response.
That would generate better discussion.
No, I understand, but I want to answer
One more comment, then you can answer. Okay.
No, I think it's a very specific question.
All right, look.
So I think that when people say all the religions have the same message of peace, and if we all, the point is, the fundamental message of all the great traditions is understood at different levels of consciousness. So we can meet a Jewish person who's a fundamentalist. A fundamentalist is a racist and a fascist. You can meet a Hindu who's a fundamentalist and a racist who's a fascist, right? And the same way you can meet a Christian who's a fundamentalist and a racist, correct? So their knowledge of the fundamental truths of Jesus, the knowledge of the fundamental truths of Hinduism, and the knowledges of the fundamental truths of Judaism, which are all beautiful and profound, don't necessarily liberate the human heart. So, yes, I agree with you. If the state of consciousness of the human being has reached the level of the universal human, because it's a very high level of consciousness to realize we're all human beings. We're all human beings, we're all brothers and sisters on the planet Earth. And in that we're all equal. So at the lower levels of consciousness, the lower levels of development, the great traditions preach in their own way ethnocentric fascism and racism, superiority, and that's the problem. So you can meet a beautiful Islamic teacher who's a Sufi who's only preaching love of everybody, going beyond any particular tradition. And you can meet the most beautiful Hindus who have reached the same level of consciousness, and the most beautiful Jews and Christians also. But inherent in the tradition it depends on the state of consciousness and the level of development of the individual who's propagating that truth. And if that individual has reached the level of development where they've realized the universal nature of being human, then all of this fighting is going to come to an end, because they'll realize you're my brother, and you'll realize I'm your brother, you're my sister. Not because of the truths of Hinduism or Judaism or Christianity, because we realize the universal nature of being a human being. And that transcends the relative distinctions of the different religious traditions. So we have to be very careful, because the traditions teach us about love and unity and freedom and compassion and mutual respect, but they also teach fascism and sexism and racism and ethnocentric superiority. So we have to be very careful. My answer to your question is yes. If the level of consciousness and the level of development of the human beings that are propagating these ideas have reached the world-centric level of universal human, I realize first and foremost I'm a human being who happens to be in Indian, who happens to be a Hindu, who happens to be the member of a particular family in a particular place. But first and foremost, I'm a human being. That's my primary identity, not my religion. And in the universal nature of my humanity, all human beings are my brothers and sisters. From that perspective, all the great traditions can teach us so much about what it means to be human. But from a lower center of consciousness, they can lead us to war, to hatred, fascism, and separatism.
Yes. I think I'm S.D. Saxena. I worked in telecom, and I'm a physicist by training. And I'm lucky to be associated with Life Positive also, of which Dr. Karthikeyan is the chairman. See, the one thing which I wanted to just comment, and then a question. The comment is that you are speaking at the Foundation for Peace, Harmony and Good Governance, FGG, where we propose this idea that the Vedanta and some of those things are universal, which is religion, It's religion agnostic. The meditational practices, the yogic practices are absolutely religion agnostic. So perhaps that is what the world has to learn. That is one. The other thing which I think what Dr. Gupta started, I'm coming full circle, and I want you to ask this question again, answer this question. See, we keep on talking that this world is unreal, it is all illusory.
Not me.
It is virtual and all that. And then the moment we get into the traffic, we start cursing, saying, oh God, I'm dying and all that, and it's the end of the world. So this is very funny that we keep on denying it, but we keep on living in it. Yes, and that is a very, very big dilemma. In physics, when we talk something, we talk absolutely something which is there, We look at some of the satellite planet, which is something like few billion light years, and say that it is there, and we prove it. So the point is, we keep on talking about and making a lot of statements which mean nothing. And what Mr. Rajput had been saying that, you deny it, and then there is a consciousness which is controlling everything. We don't feel it, because we keep on doing meditation and all that. The question is how to deny this reality in which we live. We keep on practicing it, and we keep coming back to it. How do you divorce yourself from the two? Thank you.
Yeah, but I don't think that my humble disagreement with the professor is that I'm questioning this traditional assertion that the universe and the creative process is Maya, because remember, the universe came from primordial emptiness. So the world of form, as physics would tell us, the world of form, the world of formlessness are one and not two. The world of form and the world of emptiness are one and not two. That's what the Buddha said. Formlessness and form are one and not two. Correct? This was the second turn of the wheel of Buddhism.
But physics differs a little bit. Right?
Yeah, I know, but I'm making it. No, that's fine, but I'm just making a fundamental point. That the world of formlessness and the world of form are one and not two. And because the entire universe emerged from timeless primordial emptiness or nothingness, the world of form is not separate from that nothingness. And because it's not separate from it, because that primordial nothingness gave birth to it, there's non-duality there between the nothingness and the somethingness. Nothingness is not more real than the somethingness, because the somethingness came from nothingness. That means this is God in and through form, in and through action. This is the universe that God is creating, and you and I are that. So it's real. This is really happening, and it's happening because God wanted it to happen. Because if he or she didn't want it to happen, it wouldn't be happening. This isn't Maya. This is real. What's Maya has to do with the fact that we don't know what it is. the world appears as Maya if we don't know that it's God in action. If we don't know what's really happening, that's what I would call Maya. That's the world of illusion. But when you realize this is all God in action, God is creating all this. That's what's really happening. It's not merely what it seems to be, but it's all God in action and form. That's not Maya anymore. That's truth. And I agree with you, because this idea that it's all Maya we keep pushing away the world. We keep trying to escape from it and deny it, and that creates its own duality for us. That's very hard to get over when you realize, no, this is the world that God created. And remember, as I was saying earlier, if there is only one God in the universe, and that's who you are, that means we have to deal with the fact that from an absolute, non-relative, spiritual, metaphysical point of view, we created all this. At some inconceivable, non-relative, absolute level, we did this. As strange and as weird as it seems to the small self, this is your doing. You did it. So come to terms with it. Embrace it. Embrace it. Open up our arms and try and embrace all of it, which is the ultimate challenge, the ultimate spiritual challenge for all of us, is to embrace everything fully, 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 and take as much responsibility for it as we're humanly capable of. And this is why I want to do the spiritual practice, that it will enable us to stretch wider and to embrace more and more. That's what our duty is as God in form, because the body is relative, the mind is relative, the personality is relative. The body, mind, and personality is going to die. But the energy and intelligence that's compelling the body, mind, and personality to live and to do all this is God in form. And He wants us to know who we are so we can live this life as Him and not as ourselves. In that sense, this isn't Maya. Thank you.
Dr. Marika Joseph, please kindly propose vote of thanks. Come on. Thank you.
On behalf of the Foundation for Good Governance, I would like to thank each and every one of you who made this discussion more lively, and also to Dr. Andrew Cohen for putting those fundamental questions before us on who we are and what is our purpose. And I think in recent years we have moved away from being spiritual to religion, and where we have redefined our purpose and our identity from something which is infinite to something which is, we have made limitations, we have made it more finite. So I think it's good to have this discussion, the points that you made. Many of us, when we leave from here, we may be in disagreement or total agreement with whatever Dr. Andrew said. But one thing fundamental is, like, the talk that he has given today and the discussion we've had is at least put the question back to us. Who are we and what are we here in this earth for? So I think that is the greatest contribution that I would like to thank on behalf of all of us here. Thank you very much.